Now let's be real for just a second. You can't help carry a burden if you never stop to notice. Some of us have a hard time seeing the people that God is calling us to help because our eyes are glued to our own schedules, our own phone maybe, our own problems. You know, we have this tendency in our culture where we get wrapped up in our own lives, in our own issues, in our plans, in our busyness. And so because we're wrapped up in our lives and in what's going on in our world, we forget that there are people all around us who are hurting, don't we? There are people all around us. There are people in all of our lives who are just waiting to have their burdens be seen.
You know, when Jacob opened up his sermon this past Sunday on his dislike of just about anything moving, I could not have agreed more. I was right there with him. I cannot stand to move. I couldn't stand to move when I was in my 20s and I was helping people move constantly. I moved constantly. But now if I move even a few boxes, a few boxes for an hour or so, the next 3 days, my back's just going to be sore. I know I'm getting old. So we're going to have some interaction this week. Daniel, tell me, do you dislike moving this much? What do you think about this?
I'm okay with moving.
But it does it is helpful to have somebody with you, right? I mean, obviously we just helped you and Claire move, and that wasn't that bad. We had a lot of help, so it went quickly. But for me, it's just not something I like. And I thought of this too. You have a van, we have a van, but I think of my son-in-law, Ben. He's got a truck. If you've ever known anybody with a truck, they're like the designated movers, right? Because if somebody needs help, they think, oh, you know, if we can't fit everything on the moving van, or, hey, we can even save money, not have to buy a moving truck, we can know somebody with a truck. Well, all of a sudden, they're having to loan their truck if they like you at all, and they're usually obligated to help you. So one of the reasons I don't have a truck, I'll put it that way. But when I saw this, I told Jacob, when he talked about moving and how much painful it is, you know I like my videos, right? And I don't always post videos here in the small group, but we could not resist a very short clip. There's not much of a better clip than in the sitcom history than this one I'm going to show you right now.
Just follow my lead.
Okay.
Come on, Chandler. All right, okay. Here we go. All right, ready? Yeah. Turn. Okay. Turn. Turn. I don't think we can turn anymore.
I just don't think it's gonna fit.
Oh, yeah, it will. Come on, up. Up. Yes. Oh. Here we go. Pivot. 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 Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Okay, I don't think it's gonna pivot anymore. You think?
There's the other thing I think about when I think of moving and carrying each other burdens, which is, you know, what Jacob is trying to get us to really understand is and the importance for us being there for each other. I think of sometimes it's helping people with something that you can't do on your own. So Daniel, I'm going to bring you back in on this one. Wasn't that long ago I had you over to the house, actually a couple times, but you remember me having you over for the car, Cheryl's van?
Oh, yeah.
What did we do to her van? What did I need you to help me with?
We had to replace the auxiliary battery.
The auxiliary battery, which typically, I'm not a car guy, but usually a battery is not difficult to replace unless it's a newer vehicle that you got to take out half the car's engine to get to it, which we did. So I knew Daniel just knows how to fix stuff. So he came over and helped me. I couldn't do this on my own. I bought the battery from AutoZone. We're in the middle of fixing it, and we actually got it replaced, even though we did end up having to take it to the dealership later for something else. What was the big mistake? Do you remember the big mistake we did?
I remember losing a 10mm socket inside of the chassis.
That was it. We lost the socket wrench in there. It dropped to the bottom in the heat shield. We could not get it out. It was just too many things. And the sad thing about that is, so I had to help. He helped me. I couldn't have done this on my own. The sad thing is we took it into the dealership. I forgot to tell them about it. So even today, as Cheryl's driving around, Cheryl, as you're watching this, if you hear a rattle in your van, it's more than likely a socket wrench is somewhere at the bottom of that van rattling there. But as Jacob explained in his sermon, when something is too heavy to lift by ourselves, we need help, right? This can be physical, as we've talked about, but it could also be emotional, it could be financial, it could be spiritual. So let's look at the biblical story that was used in this message about carrying each other's burdens. So we're going to go to Mark, starting in chapter 2, verse 1. And just as a reminder, Mark wasn't really a disciple, but he was one that was really close friends with Peter, who was one of Jesus' closest friends and disciples. And he's writing on Peter's experience and others of what they witnessed. And it says, a few days later, so Jesus is teaching with his disciples. A few days later from previous what was written in Mark 1, it says, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. This was his home area. And as Jacob mentioned, Jesus was really important. Jesus was well known as a very popular anchorman once said, people know me. I'm a pretty big deal. That's what Jesus was. So they gathered in such a large number that there was no room left. Not only inside, but even outside the door as he preached the word of them. So imagine Jesus in this room and he's preaching. It's just packed. There's no way to get in. And there's everybody around on the outside. But remember, this is the story where a guy was paralyzed. He could not move, could not do anything on his own. But you know what he had? He had really good friends who loved him and cared for him. And they wanted to do anything they could to get this man to Jesus. Jacob made a really good point about this story, that the friends were carrying more than just the person paralyzed. They were carrying his burdens with him, which we all need, right? And so they take this man, they don't stop when they see there's no way to get in the door. They say, hey, the only way we can get him in here is by putting him through the roof. As Jacob explained, they dug their way through the roof, they bring him down so Jesus can't help but see him. And then we go to verse 5. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, son, your sins are forgiven. And I love that Jesus saw their faith. It's something that I hadn't really thought of. It's not just the man, and I believe the man paralyzed did have great faith, but his friend says, no matter what, we need to take this to Jesus. Do you have that kind of faith that says, I don't care what it takes, we need to seek Jesus first to take care of this problem because we can't do it on our own. So now let's look at some of Jacob's learning points from this story and how we can benefit from this lesson. Number 1, real love notices the burden. And I like what he said about this, that you can't ever help carrying a burden if you don't ever stop to notice. So I'm going to share a story, but Daniel, let me bring you up on this one. What do you think about, and I didn't preface him with this question, so I don't know what he's going to say, but what do you think about noticing when somebody has a burden? What does that make you think about?
Yeah, I think of you kind of can't get the gist of what someone's going through if you don't actually know the person. So like if you're just passing someone in the street, there's no way you can know what's going on in their lives. And for that same reason, knowing the people within your church and really reaching out to our church family, you have to know the people in order to know what they're going through and what to pray for. It can't just be surface level, hey, how you doing? I'm fine, how are you? I'm great, and move on. You kind of have to get to know them in their lives.
I love that because, and I always say that it's good to build relationships and trust if you want to be a witness to somebody that maybe is not a Christian, but even inside the church, you've got to get to know people to help carry each other's burdens. I want to share a story of a study that was done that I've shared before, but I really like this. It says in 1973, John Darley and Daniel Batson conducted a study at Princeton Theological Seminary. So this is a Christian seminary teaching pastors, right? Where they examined the influence of time pressure on helping behavior use the Good Samaritan parable. So they're using this parable that most of us know, right? The Good Samaritan. Well, this study involved 40 seminary students who were divided into 2 groups. You see, one group prepared a sermon on the Good Samaritan parable, but the other group prepared a sermon on job opportunities for divinity students. Well, the students were then told to walk to another building to deliver their sermons. Well, along the way, they encountered an actor pretending to be in distress, slumped in a doorway. So they were setting this up to see what would these seminary students do. Well, the researchers manipulated the level of time pressured by telling some students that they were late. Well, some other students, they told them that they still had a few minutes. And then the last section of students were told that they had plenty of time for their talk. Well, the results showed that only 10% of those who were told they were late stopped to help. Think about that. Only 1 out of 10 people that were told that they were late stopped to help this man who was in obvious need of help, compared to 45% of those who were told they had a few minutes, and then 63% of those who were told that they had plenty of time, according to a source. So basically, the more time they were told that they had, the more willing they were able to notice a need. Well, the study emphasized that situational factors like time pressure can have a powerful influence on helping behaviors, even overriding personal beliefs and interactions. So what are steps that we can take, practical steps to make this happen in our lives and actually do what Christ is asking us to do? Number one, we know that love steps under the weight, even when it gets hard. Sometimes it's just going to be difficult to do what's necessary, right? When you see somebody in need and you don't have time, it's like you're waiting. Sometimes in our mind we're saying, you know what? I know this person needs help, but what I'm doing is really important. You see, Jesus saw the faith of the friends. Do you take time to understand, even when it's hard, it's important to get this to Jesus? Number two, love lifts others towards Christ. So do you have a reputation of somebody that does this, that lifts somebody to Christ when there's a need? I love the story that Jacob shared this past week. He talked about his time as a teacher, and I can just imagine him doing this, knowing Jacob the way I do. A student is in need. He's talked to him about how tough things are at home, and so on a one-on-one situation, which now I'm not in an area that I'm told not to have my faith broadcast. In my job, my day job in sales, I'm not told you can't share your faith. But I know teachers are often told that you can't share your faith publicly. But Jacob took a chance, a one-on-one situation, asked this guy's permission. Can I pray for you right there and then? Now, the funny thing about that is I was sitting in the back of the sanctuary, the second service, and he said, hey, if you're teachers, you know this is a no-no. I look over to my right, in the back row is Kyla Barnhart, and she's shaking her head. No, we are told you cannot do that. But Jacob does this anyway. And it makes me think, some of you may remember Pastor Abbott when he preached. He once said this, and I never forgot it. He said, do this. He says so often we pray, we ask or when somebody's in need, it's like, you know what, I'll pray for you. But isn't that like an empty promise? And once again, Daniel, I'm going to ask you, have you had people ask you that before or tell you that I'm going to pray for you and what that means to you?
Yeah, I've had a few people pray for me, and moments that come to mind are like when I had surgeries and whatnot. I was always in the church, so a lot of people would tell me that they were praying for me, and it meant a lot when people would follow up after the surgeries and tell me that they prayed for me and ask me how I was doing and everything like that.
I love that. And it's one thing, it's great. I do this many times. Yes, if you're going to pray for somebody, we can do it later. But if you have the opportunity to do it right there and then, it shows your love and your concern for the person. And make sure that you're not going to forget, because often if we say we're going to pray for somebody, are we going to remember to do it? In fact, even today, as I'm recording this, I saw a doctor who's got cancer right now, skin cancer. She's actually a dermatologist who has skin cancer on her neck. And I saw her this morning, and she got excited when I came in to tell me that she's getting good news, because she knows. She goes, thank you so much for your prayers. I've told her, that I'm in there praying for her every day, and we've prayed together. And when you do that, and when you can follow up, they know how much you care about them. You're helping to carry their burden. As we see in Galatians 6, too, the Apostle Paul writes to the churches in Galatia, carry each other's burdens. Because in this way, when you help carry the other burdens of somebody else, you're going to fulfill the law of Christ. What's the law of Christ? We know that Jesus taught to love one another more than anything else. We are to love God, love one another. This is the law of Christ. It's part of carrying each other's burdens. So the true action steps from this message of how we put this in practice. Number one, we see the need. We got to notice when someone is in need. As Daniel mentioned, do we take time? Do we slow down to recognize? Do we build relationships to notice when somebody has a need? Number two, do we step in? Do we take the boldness and the action, not just to notice and say, all right, that person has needs, but do I have the time? Am I going to be awkward in stepping in? Are we taking action and actually confronting the person and say, hey, what can I do to help? And number three, are we lifting each other up in love? So Daniel said the best, and he kind of stole this, not even knowing what I was going to say. After you pray with somebody, do you follow up? Do you let them know, hey, how are you doing with this? How is this going? That just shows we are following the law of Christ, right? We are praying for them. We're concerned about them because we love them. Now, I don't know who Carla Craig is, but I saw a quote that she put, and I want to share it. As we close today, she goes, just because it's invisible doesn't mean someone else's heavy load doesn't exist. How many times do we hide things that people don't notice? Because we all have burdens in our life, right, that we need help with. I know I want people to notice when I need help to step in, especially my Christian brothers and sisters. Don't you? Don't you want somebody to help you when you just don't know how to do it on your own? So as we end today, ask yourself every day, what does love require of me today? Have a great week.
Like and subscribe.